title the Wabash. How I long for my Indiana home.
And now for the most famous words in motorsports.
Drivers, start your engine!
Right on the tail of Marco Andretti! Can a teenager win in Indianapolis? Here's the finish. Sam Horton Jr. makes the pass. He'll win it. Sam Horton Jr.
It's not a tour de force. It's a tour de pin.
I tell him what it is. Danny Sullivan gets him. Danny Sullivan gets him down. No, he's swirling. No, he's spinning. Danny Sullivan spins. But he goes around twice and gathers it in.
Absolutely incredible. Danny Sullivan headed for victory lane in Indianapolis.
Clark put checkered flag in the air. It's a battle at the start-finish line, and Joseph Newgarden will win the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Davey Hamilton, he finally gets the buggy off him, but the pass makes it stick. Joseph Newgarden goes back-to-back, wins the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Hello everyone, and we welcome you all to the IndyCar podcast, a Borg Warner production. Since this is not a typical week that we are doing any sort of IndyCar talk or anything like that until the next race at Mid-Ohio on July 6th, I wanted to also welcome everybody back to the podcast. And the reason why I didn't have the podcast airing for a while now was simply because I wanted to I was actually having a lot happen in my personal life, a lot of changes, a lot of growth, post-graduation, all that stuff. But then after the Indianapolis 500, 2 races go by, and I say to myself, is my direction really to take this podcast to IndyCar and just continue talking about IndyCar until August and September? Or is this to continue it as an Indianapolis 500 podcast? I even told you guys we were going to cover some more races after the Indy 500. I got extremely tired the week of the next race, which was actually in Detroit, and that I got really, really tired from. That was not my fault. That was after the Indianapolis 500 and all that. But, I mean, just fatigue from that of sorts. And then, of course, transitions and summer bills, and we're just trying to find a way to make ends meet. So we're just doing the best we possibly can here. Started my own newspaper company this week. So it's been big for me. The big thing I wanted to talk to you all today was Formula One the movie. Now, Formula One the movie I saw with my family at a movie theater in Indiana. I will not disclose where. And we saw this movie that features Brad Pitt in it. Probably the biggest star of the entire movie was Brad Pitt. More on him in a bit. But I will say this. The F1 movie, and I get we are an IndyCar channel, I know, but I think the F1 movie is important to talk about along with that. I think it's super important to even address the IndyCar series along with the Formula One series as well, since that's going on for most of the summer and most of the fall. And so, of course, F1's going to be there until as IndyCar leaves. And so at the end of the year, all you're going to have left in late November, early December is Formula One racing, and the last race will be at Abu Dhabi. So we want to make this more about motorsports. But yeah, Formula One, the movie, is a great, great, great film. I thought it was great. Not one that I would want to watch again. I think the movie in general was very unrealistic to the art of IndyCar, highly unrealistic. I think it's extremely full of Hollywood jazz, full of superstar athletes trying to be played by very athletic and very, very pie-popping male and female actors in this movie. And I think even though it's unrealistic, it matched one quality to it. It was fun. It was a fun movie to watch. It was so fun, in fact, that 1 minute you'll have yourself on the edge of your seat, and then another minute you're going to have yourself probably sitting back a little bored, and then another minute there'll be a big crash coming, and I don't want to leave any spoilers, by the way, but there will be a big crash coming, and you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you don't even know how you would think or feel. Because quite honestly, I'm just saying, some of those crashes, even though they were very CGI heavy, were very, very real. I thought the crashes were real. The parts with Brad Pitt in the film were so good. I mean, this whole movie was good and entertaining. It's fun if you're a beginner wanting to watch Formula One. If you're not into Formula One, and I've been into Formula One since I was about 5 years old, being into Formula One, you just see it in a different lens. If you watch it, it's more high drama, high action, high octane energy, very unreal to the product, but also very trying to match the product extremely well. And what they delivered for beginners who want to watch F1 for the first time was very nice to see. It was a good, entertaining, fun movie. It was fun. I will say that. Very, very fun. And I will say the movie itself, which Brad Pitt plays Sonny Hayes, who's a retired race car driver who's just wanting to get back into Formula One or some kind of racing. I mean, he was great in the film. Just really lived off the definition of arrogant. Really lives off the all these characters mostly lived off the definition of superstar athletes, superstar models, superstar actors, really putting on a super-sized product. And it's so good and so refreshing to see that in Hollywood, because you do not, I mean, you get a lot of movies today that don't center around sports. You mainly watch that stuff on Apple TV Plus, and I thank Apple Films for not putting that film on Apple TV Plus. Because if they did, I don't know how I would see this movie. It was really, really clean. And like I was going to mention with Brad Pitt, but I didn't. Brad Pitt did a great job in this film. He plays the character of an arrogant, yet very aging, very off the wall driver. More one you wouldn't even be thinking about very often. It's a good, like I said, he was a great act. He's a great actor anyway. I saw him in Moneyball. He was really good at Moneyball. But this, I think, is maybe his best sports performance that I've seen. Moneyball, he played an executive trying to basically Billy Bean, if you know anything about baseball. The whole movie was, I mean, the whole movie was basically centered around Billy Bean trying to rebuild this team while using analytics and stats over old models that old scouts would use in baseball. And of course, this is based on a true story. Like the '02 Oakland A's, they later went on to go to the ALDS and lose to the Minnesota Twins, or the wild card, and then lost to the Minnesota Twins, which was such a rotten shame. But that's for another day. The big thing is that Brad Pitt played really, really well in the movie. I thought he played the best in that film that I've seen him in most sports films. And I thought Moneyball was great and everything. It was an Oscar-nominated film. It was all about stats and analytics. This is what we wanted to see out of Brad Pitt. We want to see more high-action, high-octane movies with Brad Pitt in it. Even some woman behind me in the theater was screaming at the thought of Brad Pitt. And many people were telling her, hey, let's try to enjoy the movie. Let's tame this down. Or you're getting all excited over a driver or a actor. And so that wasn't really a problem. It was just going to be more of an inconvenience in the theater because, as you've noticed in movie theaters, people don't know how to behave. People really don't know how to behave in a movie theater anymore since COVID. But yeah, I will say that's for another day as well. But Brad Pitt played this arrogant role so well. The guy that I fell in love with the character from Damson Idris. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Idris or something like that. The best character in the whole film. Plays the greatest antagonist I've ever seen in a sports flick. I think he is, the best part is that him and Brad Pitt are both on the same team. You don't get a lot of these movies where you have more of the arrogant type is on an opposing team, or the opposing type would be on Red Bull Racing, or if it was about IndyCar, one would be driving for Penske and another would be driving for Andretti Racing. I mean, it was his character I thought was greater than Brad Pitt's in some ways. He's black, he's African American. That kind of like really makes you just imagine how diverse this sport could be if they tried to really do harder on that. I like the other scene, speaking of diversity, I love the scene where they had the woman who was the first F1 pit crew member. That was very enlightening. But I'll be honest, you don't see a lot of black actors playing black drivers. And he played the villain role so well on that team. And he really was hated by everybody until around the end when he began to soften up and really understand what Sonny was doing for the team, what Sonny was bringing to the team, what he was trying to prove to everybody. It really built everybody up. It even built him up because he's like, oh, I'm just this arrogant 23-year-old man who's just trying to make a means in a life. And he's just this arrogant kid who uses his phone. It's all the classic stereotypes. It's an amazing movie. It's an amazing movie. Or I wouldn't really say 23. I'd say a young driver. But he's a young driver, very arrogant, and he did that role so well. Because the thing is that Brad Pitt's character spoke volume, but Damson's character, where he played Josh, who appears in the movie, so good, just so good in this film. The fact it was directed by Lewis Hamilton, just really, at least it was under the direction of Lewis Hamilton, who could pinpoint and tell you, hey, this is one scene, this is another scene, this is another scene, and we need to get the product right. And he got the product right. It was just not a very realistic tale of how IndyCar racing is, but there were points where they were really trying to bring in more of a beginner's understanding of the sport. And I really appreciated the value that Lewis Hamilton and the director of this film, Joseph Konietzki, the fact that they really brought forth IndyCar and F1 references were really nice to see, because as an IndyCar and F1 fan, a NASCAR fan as well, for my whole life, I can honestly tell you that was just entertaining to know that the product itself looked good, but at some points it was unrealistic, and it's really good for beginners. But the other thing, like we just mentioned with Brad Pitt and Damson Idris's characters, and also Javier Bardem's character as well in the film, where he played the role of an executive crew chief. And to be quite honest, that he did great in that movie too. All three of them. Kerry Condon as the woman, as like the driver's aide that helps the team. She did great. She did great in that film. All these actors did a superb job. But my only thing was, like I said, it not being very unrealistic to the product of F1, really being full of arrogance, just a lot of arrogance in the entire film. Shows you the direction where IndyCar and F1 are headed. I'll stay with IndyCar. When I was at the Indianapolis 500, I met Stingray Robb and his family, his team. I also met the race team that I'm blessed to have met them and seen all the stuff that they were going through with prepping for the Indy 500 the next day. They did a great job showing us that. But I don't know about, because I grew up like very modest. I grew up very not thinking too much about money and fame. I'm always the type that always dreamed of having money and fame. But this movie really was just the one part I thought was really real was how the movie accurately portrayed the crew chief and the members of the team. That was so on point, because when I met Stingray Robb and his team, now I'm not going to offend anybody, and I hope to not offend anybody, but this isn't particularly about Stingray. This is about his team and about also other teams I saw in the paddock at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on Gasoline Alley. Arrogant was the one word that I can honestly say rung around the halls of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this year. And I will also say I'm thankful for the trip. I'm thankful to have gone. But us being from me, my mom, my sister, being from small town Indiana, not used to very much. The only real big city we even go to is Bloomington, Indiana. And that's really small without the kids there and everything at IU. But once they do come, you see some arrogant kids too. You see some narcissistic kids. You see some very sought after kids. But I will tell you this. That was the most accurate portrayal on how the drivers, how the crew chief how the teams are. Not so much Stingray. I thank Stingray and his family for helping us get these tickets, and everything was great. But let's just say that some of the, not really him, but some of the race team members of not his team, but other teams like Penske and some of the others, not Andretti, but Penske and sometimes somewhat Pato Award's team. Um, I would say that a lot of people really disrespected us because we didn't really belong there. I didn't think we belonged there because there was one scene in the film where there was an executive of the team that Brad Pitt was driving in, and his team ends up going to Abu Dhabi, and the owner has like this big old dinner, luncheon, whatever you call it, in the middle of the night in Abu Dhabi as the drivers are getting ready to race, and Brad Pitt looks up at who the owner is of that team, who forged his documents of injury, or something related to that in the movie. I wasn't really for sure what they were talking about, but the executive looked more like some kind of windbag or something like that. I thought he played that role so well, that actor who portrayed the owner of the team. But Brad Pitt basically gives him the little finger, gets in his car, and wins the race at the end. But I will say that the owner was very accurate. The race team members were very, very accurate. And what I'm trying to put after is this sport is dealing with a lot of rich yet arrogant people. And we don't think the same way that they do. And I think if I started driving an Indy car, which is hopefully a dream of mine, it's a dream of mine to drive an Indy car, I would never treat people the way that some of these rich people treated us. I mean, crew chief members left and right, and one of the only flaws to that trip, since now I got more room to talk about it, was that they had shut the gate on my mom and my sister, and they had waited an entire lifetime to see the inside of a race car. And once I got them into the race area, they didn't want her there. They didn't want my mom and sister there. They really didn't want us to tour the car at all. They had group after group after group come in, and my mom and sister just felt left behind while there's all these trucks and cars and everything else driving along the whole paddock, acting like they are conducting business while others are viewing their cars. Penske was also covering up their cars to hide them from the scandal that I addressed in other podcasts, where Roger Penske put aerodynamics or extra aerodynamics in the car, cheating their way to near victory, but victory never happened for them. And karma was a jerk for Penske because it later ended up backfiring on them. But I will say that those race teams, I'd say IndyCar and F1. I haven't seen NASCAR, and I won't be able to see NASCAR at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when we go to the Brickyard on July 27th. But I will say that the team is very, very, like, I don't know how to word it. It's just more like in their head. I mean, they're not level-headed. They don't think about other people. And I will say that movie did a spectacular job at showing the crew chief and the crew members. Because a lot of them, except for the pit crew members really try as hard as they possibly can to do everything they can to please the team, please their boss, please their owner. And you could tell at the beginning of the film their lap times were just struggling to even get the car off the grid. And then all of a sudden, there's that one crew member that's a woman who decides to put in the tires more quickly, And I will say, she did great in that movie. And I will say, the race team in this movie did a good job at trying to work together and be more of a team more at the end. It just felt like Mighty Ducks. Classic Mighty Ducks, where the good team, or the team full of a bunch of underdogs, ended up winning the game. I mean, it's just that simple of a concept of that movie. But overall, I mean, the movie was a great movie for motor racing fans. If you are a beginning motor racing fan, we didn't grow up with F1 the movie. I grew up with a movie called Driven, and it was pretty similar to Driven. But Driven, I will say, had way more CGI, way more early 2000s melodrama romance, more than that, Sylvester Stallone type action film with a lot of romance, a lot of really adversity, and those two guys that you saw in the movie were pretty much that Driven movie were not really as arrogant as today, but I would say the paparazzi didn't get to them as much. But the movie at the end showed the blue car and the red car basically speeding at it. And the film is actually based on of Kart, which is now a member of IndyCar. Its history is a part of IndyCar now. So that was really, I thought the movie, that was terrible. I did not like Driven. But F1, the movie, was way better than Driven. But still, I think the greatest F1 movie maybe ever was the film that featured Niki Lauda. And I thought that might have been the best. I mean, I will tell you, it's called Rush. And the movie Rush was about Niki Lauda in 2013. And James Hunt and that rivalry they had against each other, that was the most accurate portrayal of F1 that I have personally seen. That was actually better than F1 the movie. That was a great, great film that was made. But I will admit to this very day, if you want me to be real, the F1 movie is a mid-tier movie. I'd recommend you see it for yourself to get a full opinion. But the movie itself is a good, heartwarming tale, but unrealistic to the product of auto racing and Formula One, because it's way more than just all that melodrama, romance, all that stuff. At least it's not Driven, though. I mean, it's not Driven, where the whole movie's almost based off some of the old 90s films. There's a movie with Kevin Costner several years ago, or in 1999, where he played a pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. Have these guitar song, guitar riffs, and it just doesn't match up the movie well. And Driven was kind of like that. But if that was based off F1, who knows what that movie could have and should have been like. Because I think that movie had a lot of promise to it. It's just finding the project was actually the only problem of that film. Like, the Rush movie has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, whereas it also has an 8.1 out of 10 rating on IMDb, and 88% of people liked it. But as for the F1 movie, it's kind of the opposite, where critics didn't really think highly of the film. It's at 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a 7.9 out of 10 rating on IMDb, and 68% on Metacritic, which I think is pretty low for a film like that. But 96% of people liked the movie. They loved the movie. 96% of people will go for an unrealistic drama about F1 over a more realistic film about F1 featuring Niki Lauda, but that was respected by fans and critics alike. But overall, if I had to give this a score of any score, I'd actually give the F1 movie a 7 out of 10 just based on quality of the film. I would rate it about a 7.5, but I don't know if I should, because there was just some parts as a motor racing fan and enthusiast that you just personally just scratch your head like, how could that happen? Or how could this happen? And a lot of it was just more about featuring F1 at its finest, featuring some people that look realistic to drivers and having them play a really critical role in the film. And I thought the film was very well done, but very entertaining. And if you could take your kids to this film, I'd recommend it. I would highly recommend you take your kids to this film. Because if they want to learn about Formula One, and then buy their own cars and their own trucks and whatever else, and build their own race trucks, like, I want to see more of that today. I want to see more die-cast cars. I'd love the die-cast cars for F1. We bought some of them for ourselves and for us to play with. But we also have some diecast for collections and stuff like that, but we really want to see more stop motion. I grew up on stop motion NASCAR footage, and so an IndyCar footage. So I would really love to see that come back again with F1, but we would love to see a bigger audience for F1, and already it's grown in audience. which that's exactly what you do if you want to promote your product very well. I wish there was more IndyCar. I really do. I wish there was more IndyCar films, but we do have Driven. But we think there's also Turbo, the one with the snail. That was based off of the Indy 500. But I'll just say this. The movie is a good movie if you're young. You don't know what racing is. You don't know how Formula One works. And you want a good general idea of how the sport works. In reality, it's not a realistic film. It's a raw film about racing, but not very realistic to the product of racing. Overall, Formula One did a great job at promoting their product, getting more fans and more people opportunity to see the film for themselves and actually become a fan of the overall product. But the one thing I will tell you is that the movie is very different from watching the actual product of Formula One racing. It's not very, I wouldn't recommend this for an experienced pro or someone that's seen the film or seen racing in its finest or even were a driver. Because there's just some things you could just say, this isn't realistic, and this isn't realistic, and this isn't realistic. Like, for example, they kept saying books for the pit stop. You don't hear that in IndyCar. And then they just want to make the entire film based solely off of track position and Brad Pitt smashing into little bitty walls and getting into trouble. I mean, he literally would receive a penalty for that kind of stuff. He definitely would, trying to cause carnage so his teammate could get ahead of in points. That kind of, I don't know if they're trying to base that off of the 2007 incident with Fernando Alonso winning in Singapore, but I don't know what they're basing that off of. But it just, to me, it's very much, at least there was an entire war scene, like in 2005 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That happened 10 years ago this month on the 19th of no less. We're recording this on the 29th. But that was a horrible day. That was just a horrible day for IndyCar, horrible day for the sport of F1, and horrible day for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But even though you had that great Indianapolis 500 that we had in May, that was a letdown in June. But I will admit, it's a very big digression from actual racing. If you see the film and then get let down, be like, oh, that's not how Formula One really is it? No, it isn't the way that the movie portrays it. But I will say this. The movie to me is an entertaining film, and I'd highly recommend you see it for the summer. It's a blockbuster. It's an action film. It's a drama, but it's not a realistic drama. So keep your eyes and ears open for any type of unrealistic or realistic expose of the film. This is the longest movie review I've ever done, but if you want to see it for yourself, there's showtimes all over the country, and I'd highly recommend you see F1 the movie. It's a good film and very entertaining. We want to thank you so much for listening to the IndyCar podcast, a Borg Warner production. We're going to switch back to the Indianapolis 500 podcast, a Borg Warner production, very soon, around next May. And then we're going to do a good job at trying to promote more of the Indianapolis 500 for next year. And this is our first podcast back, so we welcome everybody back to the show, back to the channel, back to everything you need to know about IndyCar. And we thank you at F1, and we thank you so much for listening to the IndyCar podcast. Have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon after the Mid-Ohio race. Thank you all so much, and have a great day.